In the dusty streets of Baghdad, a young black woman walked past a group of military contractors who barely glanced her way. To them, she was just another support staff member, maybe a translator or medic. They had no idea that the unassuming woman carrying a simple duffel bag was actually Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, one of the deadliest snipers in U.S. military history and the secret leader of the most classified SEAL operations in Iraq. What happened next would shatter every assumption they had about who belonged on the battlefield and who had the right to lead America's elite warriors into combat. The morning sun cast long shadows across the forward operating base as Sarah Mitchell adjusted the strap of her gear bag and walked toward the briefing tent. At 28, she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned her place in a world that never expected her to succeed. Her dark skin glistened with a thin layer of sweat from the Iraqi heat, and her hair was pulled back in a regulation bun that revealed the determined set of her jaw. As she passed a group of private military contractors gathered around their armored vehicles, she caught fragments of their conversation. They were discussing the upcoming operation with the kind of bravado that came from watching too many action movies and not enough real combat. "I heard they're sending some SEAL team on this one of them said, spitting into the dust. "Probably some hotshot white boy from California who thinks he's Rambo." "Yeah, well, whoever's leading it better know what they're doing," another replied. "This sector's been heating up. We lost 2 convoys last week." Sarah kept walking, her expression unchanged. She had heard variations of this conversation countless times over the past 6 years of her military career. The assumptions were always the same. The surprise that followed was always worth it. She had grown up in Detroit, where her grandmother had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Grandma Ruth had been a seamstress who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table and had instilled in Sarah a work ethic that would later serve her well in the military's most demanding training programs. "Baby girl," her grandmother used to say while mending clothes late into the night, "this world's going to try to tell you what you can and can't do based on how you look. But you remember something. Your hands can do anything anybody else's hands can do, and your mind can think anything anybody else's mind can think. The only difference is you're going to have to prove it twice as hard." Those words had echoed in Sarah's mind through every challenge she faced. When she enlisted in the Navy at 18, her recruiter had suggested she consider administrative work, or perhaps training as a hospital corpsman. She had smiled politely and told him she wanted to be a sniper. The laughter that followed still rang in her ears sometimes, especially during moments like these when she was preparing for another mission that would test everything she had learned and everything she had become. Her path to the SEALs hadn't been traditional. Women weren't officially allowed in combat roles when she started, but Sarah had found ways to prove her worth. She had started as a Navy intelligence specialist, but her marksmanship scores during training had been so exceptional that her commanding officer had quietly arranged for her to receive additional sniper training. Her first confirmed kill had come during a deployment to Afghanistan in 2009. A Taliban fighter had been targeting a convoy of Marines from a ridge nearly 800 meters away. Sarah had been providing intelligence support from an overwatch position when she spotted the muzzle flash. Without waiting for orders, she had taken the shot. 1 bullet, 1 kill. The Marines never knew who had saved their lives. Word of her abilities spread quietly through certain circles, the kind of circles where results mattered more than regulations and where the mission took priority over military politics. By 2011, she was unofficially attached to Special Operations Units, providing sniper support and intelligence analysis for high-value target missions. The official integration of women into combat roles in 2013 had simply made legal what Sarah had already been doing for years. By then, she had 17 confirmed kills and had participated in over 40 special operations missions across 3 countries. Her promotion to lieutenant commander had come with an unusual assignment. She would lead a specialized team of SEALs in Iraq, tasked with hunting down high-value targets in the urban warfare environment of post-invasion Iraq. The catch was that her leadership role would remain classified. Officially, she was still listed as intelligence support. Unofficially, she was making life-or-death decisions for some of America's most elite warriors. The briefing tent was already full when she entered. 6 SEALs sat around a folding table covered with maps, satellite photos, and intelligence reports. These men had been handpicked for this unit, chosen not just for their combat skills, but for their ability to follow orders without asking questions about gender or race. They had worked with Sarah for 8 months now, and they trusted her completely. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez looked up as she entered. "Morning, Commander." "We've got movement on the target." Sarah set her gear down and moved to the table. The target was Ahmad Hassan, a former Iraqi Republican Guard colonel who had been organizing insurgent attacks against coalition forces. Intelligence indicated he was planning something big, and Sarah's team had been tasked with taking him out before he could execute his plan. "What's the latest intel?" she asked, studying the aerial photographs spread across the table. Petty Officer First Class James Thompson, the team's communications specialist, handed her a folder. "Drone surveillance from last night shows increased activity at the safe house. We counted at least 8 individuals entering between 2200 and 040 hours. Hassan was positively identified among them." Sarah opened the folder and reviewed the images. Hassan was a tall, thin man with a distinctive scar running down the left side of his face, a souvenir from the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. He had been a competent military officer before the invasion, and he had adapted those skills to insurgent warfare with deadly effectiveness. "What's the building layout?" she asked. Petty Officer Second Class David Park, their explosives expert, pointed to a detailed floor plan. 2-story residential structure. Typical Iraqi urban architecture. Flat roof, internal courtyard, thick walls. Main entrance here, back entrance through the courtyard. Windows on the second floor provide good sightlines over the surrounding area. Sarah studied the plan carefully. The building was located in a densely populated neighborhood in eastern Baghdad, surrounded by similar structures housing civilian families. Any operation would need to be precise and quick to minimize collateral damage. "Civilian population?" she asked. "Heavy," responded Petty Officer Second Class Michael Chen, their intelligence analyst. "Families with children in the surrounding buildings. Local intelligence suggests Hassan chose this location specifically because he knows we're reluctant to operate in areas with high civilian density." Sarah nodded. It was a common tactic among insurgent leaders, using civilian populations as human shields while planning attacks against coalition forces and Iraqi civilians who cooperated with the new government. "What's our window?" she asked. Chief Rodriguez consulted his watch. "Hassan typically moves at dawn for morning prayers at the local mosque. That gives us about a 30-minute window when he's stationary and separated from his security team. But the mosque is even more crowded with civilians." Sarah walked to the large map mounted on the tent wall and studied the neighborhood layout. The mosque was 3 blocks from the safe house, connected by narrow streets that would make vehicular approach difficult. But the route Hassan would take was predictable, and there were several buildings that would provide good overwatch positions. "What about extraction?" she asked. 2 routes planned," Thompson replied. "Primary extraction point is here, secondary is here. Both have helicopter landing zones within acceptable range." Zara continued studying the map, her mind working through the tactical problems. This was the kind of operation that required split-second timing and perfect execution. One mistake could result in civilian casualties, which would not only be morally unacceptable, but would also provide powerful propaganda for the insurgency. "Gentlemen," she said finally, turning back to the team, "this is going to be a sniper operation. Clean, precise, minimal footprint." The SEALs nodded. They had conducted similar missions with Sarah before, and they knew her reputation for precision. In 8 months of operations, her team had eliminated 14 high-value targets without a single civilian casualty. "Rodriguez Park, you're with me on Overwatch. Thompson, Chen, you'll provide communications and intelligence support from the mobile command post. We go in light, fast, and quiet." As the team began preparing their equipment, Sarah felt the familiar calm that came before a mission. This was what she had trained for, what she had been building toward since that first day at the recruiting station when they had laughed at her ambition. Her sniper rifle was a customized M40A5 modified to her exact specifications. The weapon had been with her for 3 years now, and she knew its capabilities as well as she knew her own heartbeat. At 600 meters, she could place a bullet within a 2-inch circle consistently. At 800 meters, she could still achieve a 4-inch group. Beyond that, environmental factors became more significant, but she had made successful shots at over 1,000 meters when conditions were right. The rifle wasn't just a tool. It was an extension of her will, a way to project force with surgical precision across distances that kept her team and civilian populations safe. Every shot she had taken in combat had been calculated, not just for accuracy, but for the broader tactical and strategic implications. As she cleaned and inspected the weapon, her mind went back to her grandmother's funeral 2 years earlier. Grandma Ruth had lived to see Sarah's promotion to lieutenant commander, had lived to know that her granddaughter was leading special operations missions, though she never knew the classified details. "I'm proud of you, baby girl," had been among her last words. "You showed them what we're made of." The afternoon briefing included updates from higher command. Intelligence analysts had intercepted communications suggesting that Hassan was planning a coordinated attack against the Green Zone, the heavily fortified area in central Baghdad that housed the Iraqi government and coalition headquarters. The attack was scheduled for the following week, timed to coincide with a visit by high-ranking American officials. "This makes Hassan a priority target," explained Colonel Williams, the base commander. "We need him eliminated before he can execute this plan." Hassan had been recruiting former Republican Guard officers and foreign fighters, building a network capable of conducting sophisticated attacks against hardened targets. His elimination would significantly disrupt insurgent operations in the Baghdad area. The mission was approved for the following morning. Sarah's team would insert before dawn, establish overwatch positions, and wait for Hassan's morning movement to the mosque. The shot would need to be taken during a narrow window when Hassan was separated from civilian populations but before he reached the mosque grounds. That evening, as Sarah prepared her equipment, she thought about the contractors she had passed that morning. In a few hours, she would be leading American Special Operations Forces into combat, making decisions that could affect the course of the war in Iraq. Yet those same contractors would probably still see her as just another support person if they passed her in the hallway. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had spent years proving herself in a military culture that often judged people by their appearance before considering their capabilities. Now she was planning an operation that would remove a significant threat to coalition forces and Iraqi civilians, and the people who would benefit from her success would never know who had made it possible. But that was the nature of special operations work. Success was measured not in recognition or glory, but in missions completed and lives saved. Sarah had long ago made peace with fighting a war where her greatest victories would remain forever classified. As she settled into her sleeping bag that night, Sarah's mind ran through the mission one final time. Every detail had been planned, every contingency considered. Tomorrow morning, she would once again prove that excellence in combat had nothing to do with the color of skin or gender, and everything to do with skill, determination, and the willingness to put the mission above personal recognition. The last thing she thought about before sleep was her grandmother's voice. "Your hands can do anything. Anybody else's hands can do." Tomorrow, those hands would be holding a sniper rifle, and they would once again prove that Sarah Mitchell belonged exactly where she was. Sarah woke at 0330 hours, her internal clock as reliable as any alarm. The forward operating base was quiet except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional footstep of perimeter guards making their rounds. She lay still for a moment, listening to the sounds of the base awakening, then rose and began her pre-mission routine. The ritual never changed. Physical inspection of all equipment, weapons check, communications test, review of mission parameters, and a final intelligence brief. These habits had kept her alive through dozens of operations, and she wasn't about to change them now. In the equipment tent, her team was already assembling their gear. Chief Rodriguez was checking his spotting scope and rangefinder, while Park inspected the team's communications equipment. Thompson and Chen were reviewing the latest overnight intelligence reports, looking for any changes that might affect the mission. "Anything new?" Sarah asked as she approached the intelligence station. Chen handed her a folder. "Drone surveillance from 0200 to 0300 shows the target is still in the safe house. Number unusual activity in the surrounding area. Weather looks good, minimal wind, clear skies, temperature steady." Sarah reviewed the meteorological data. Wind speed and direction were crucial factors for long-range shooting. Today's conditions were nearly ideal, with light winds from the southeast at less than 5 knots. Temperature would rise throughout the morning, but for their purposes the thermal stability would remain adequate. "What about Hassan's security detail?" she asked. "Same pattern as yesterday," Rodriguez replied. 2 men with him at all times, both armed with AK-47s. Their former Republican Guard like Hassan, probably competent fighters but not special operations trained. Sarah nodded. The intelligence picture was consistent with previous observations. Hassan was careful but not paranoid. He maintained basic security protocols but hadn't adopted the more sophisticated measures used by higher-level insurgent leaders. At 0430, the team loaded their equipment into 2 unmarked vehicles for the drive to their insertion point. Sarah rode in the lead vehicle with Rodriguez and Park, while Thompson and Chen followed in the communications vehicle that would serve as their mobile command post. The streets of Baghdad were mostly empty at this hour, with only occasional pedestrians heading to early morning jobs or religious observances. Street lights were sporadic, many having been destroyed by insurgent attacks or simple neglect. The city still bore the scars of the invasion and the subsequent insurgency, with blast walls, checkpoints, and concrete barriers dividing neighborhoods that had once been seamlessly connected. As they drove through the city, Sarah reflected on how much Iraq had changed since her first deployment. The initial optimism following the fall of Saddam Hussein had given way to a complex insurgency that drew fighters from across the region. What had begun as a conventional military operation had evolved into a counterinsurgency campaign requiring different skills and different thinking. The sniper's role in counterinsurgency was particularly complex. Unlike conventional warfare where targets were clearly identified enemy combatants, urban operations required split-second decisions about threat assessment and civilian safety. A sniper in Iraq needed to be not just an expert marksman, but a tactical analyst, capable of understanding the broader implications of every shot. Their insertion point was a 3-story building that provided good overwatch of Hassan's safe house and the route he would take to the mosque. The building's owner, an Iraqi businessman who supported the coalition, had quietly provided access in exchange for security guarantees for his family. Sarah's team climbed to the roof as Thompson and Chen established the command post in an alley 2 blocks away. From the rooftop position, Sarah had a clear line of sight to the safe house entrance, approximately 650 meters away. The angle was slightly elevated, which would require adjustment to her ballistics calculations, but well within her effective range. Rodriguez set up his spotting scope adjacent to Sarah's position. As her spotter, his job was to identify targets, calculate environmental factors, and provide real-time intelligence about the tactical situation. Their partnership had developed over months of operations, reaching the point where they could communicate with minimal verbal exchange. "Wind check," Sarah said softly as she settled behind her rifle. Rodriguez observed wind indicators, dust movement, fabric motion, vegetation, at various points between their position and the target area. Wind southeast, 3 knots, steady. No thermals evident. Sarah adjusted her scope accordingly. At 650 meters, a 3-knot crosswind would deflect her bullet approximately 2 inches, easily correctable with proper aim point adjustment. She dry-fired the rifle several times, feeling the trigger break and ensuring her position was comfortable and stable. At 0545, Chen's voice crackled through their earpieces. Movement at the safe house. 2 individuals exiting, taking positions at the entrance. Sarah peered through her scope. Hassan's security team was establishing an overwatch pattern, positioning themselves to observe the street in both directions. This was consistent with their previous behavior, indicating that Hassan would emerge within the next 10 to 15 minutes. Target preparation, Rodriguez observed quietly, scanning the safe house through his spotting scope. At 0553, Hassan appeared at the safe house entrance. Sarah could see him clearly through her scope, tall, thin, with the distinctive facial scar that marked him as their target. He wore traditional Iraqi dress and carried prayer beads, maintaining his cover as a devout Muslim attending morning prayers. Positive identification, Rodriguez confirmed. Target acquired. Hassan paused at the entrance, speaking briefly with his security team. Then he began walking east toward the mosque, following the route intelligence had predicted. His security team took positions on either side of the street, maintaining a loose formation that provided protection while appearing casual to any observers. Sarah tracked Hassan through her scope as he walked down the narrow street. The distance was decreasing as he moved closer to her position, but the angle was becoming more complex due to the urban terrain. Buildings, power lines, and other obstacles created potential deflection points that she needed to account for. Range 480 meters and closing, Rodriguez reported. Wind steady, no significant obstacles. Sarah's breathing slowed as she entered what snipers called the zone, that mental state where external distractions faded and focus narrowed to the single point where crosshairs and target would meet. Her finger found the trigger, applying just enough pressure to take up the slack without firing. Hassan stopped at a small shop, apparently purchasing something from the vendor. This wasn't part of his usual pattern, and Sarah felt a moment of concern. Changes in routine could indicate awareness of surveillance or preparation for evasive action. Anomaly? She whispered to Rodriguez. Confirmed. Target has deviated from expected route. Assessing threat level. Through her scope, Sarah could see Hassan engaged in what appeared to be normal commercial interaction. The shop owner was an elderly man who showed no signs of distress or unusual behavior. After a brief exchange, Hassan handed the man money and received what looked like a small package of food. Assessment normal commercial activity, Rodriguez concluded. Target resuming movement toward objective. Hassan continued east, unwrapping what appeared to be a piece of bread as he walked. His security team maintained their positions, showing no signs of increased alertness. The deviation had been genuinely innocent, a momentary hunger that had prompted an unscheduled stop. As Hassan approached the final intersection before the mosque, Sarah faced a tactical decision. She could take the shot now, while he was still isolated from civilian populations, or wait until he was closer to the mosque, where the range would be shorter but the risk of civilian casualties would increase. The intersection represented the optimal engagement point. Hassan would be clearly visible, separated from his security team by the width of the street, and still 200 meters from the mosque grounds where morning worshippers might be present. The range would be approximately 420 meters, well within Sarah's effective engagement envelope. Final approach, Rodriguez reported. Target entering optimal engagement zone. Sarah's breathing became even more controlled. She could feel her heartbeat, timing her shot for the natural respiratory pause between breaths when her body would be most stable. Her finger applied additional pressure to the trigger, bringing it to the breaking point. Hassan paused at the intersection, looking both ways before crossing. For a moment, he stood perfectly still, presenting the ideal target profile. Sarah's crosshairs settled on the center of his chest, accounting for the slight downward angle and the minimal wind deflection. "Send it," Rodriguez whispered, the sniper's traditional command for taking the shot. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding buildings. Through her scope, Sarah saw Hassan collapse immediately, struck center mass by the 7.62 mm bullet that had traveled 420 meters in less than half a second. His security team spun around looking for the source of the shot, but the sound had echoed off multiple buildings, making the origin difficult to pinpoint. "Target down," Rodriguez confirmed. "Clean hit, no movement." Sarah worked the bolt, chambering another round while maintaining observation of the target area. Hassan lay motionless in the intersection, clearly dead from the massive trauma caused by the high-velocity bullet. His security team was moving toward his position, but their focus was on immediate medical aid rather than tactical response. "Egress in 30 seconds, Sarah said, beginning to pack her equipment. The shot had been successful, but they needed to leave the area quickly before Iraqi police or insurgent reinforcements could respond. The team moved efficiently down the stairwell and out of the building through a pre-planned exit route. Their vehicles were waiting in an alley 2 blocks away, engines running and drivers ready for immediate departure. Within 3 minutes of the shot, Sarah's team was moving through Baghdad traffic toward their extraction point. Chen's voice came through the radio from the command vehicle. Positive confirmation of target elimination. No signs of organized response from insurgent forces. The mission had been executed flawlessly. Hassan, one of the most effective insurgent leaders in Baghdad, had been eliminated without civilian casualties or coalition losses. The intelligence networks he had been building would be disrupted, and his planned attack against the Green Zone would not occur. As they drove back to the forward operating base, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Another high-value target removed, another threat to coalition forces and Iraqi civilians eliminated. The skills her grandmother had insisted she possessed had once again proven themselves in the crucible of combat. But even as she savored the successful mission, Sarah knew that most people would never know what had been accomplished that morning. The contractors who had dismissed her the previous day would continue to assume that combat leadership belonged to others. The broader military establishment would credit the success to her male team members, as had happened so many times before. At the base, the debriefing was conducted by Colonel Williams and his intelligence staff. Sarah presented a detailed analysis of the operation, discussing the tactical decisions that had led to success and identifying lessons learned for future missions. "Outstanding work, Commander Mitchell," Williams said as the briefing concluded. "This elimination significantly degrades insurgent capabilities in the Baghdad area." But Sarah noticed that when Williams briefed higher headquarters later that day, her role was minimized in favor of emphasizing the SEAL team that had conducted the operation. It was a familiar pattern, one that reflected institutional biases that persisted even when individual commanders recognized her contributions. That evening, as Sarah cleaned her rifle and prepared her equipment for the next mission, she overheard a conversation between 2 junior officers discussing the day's operation. "I heard the SEALs got Hassan this morning," one of them said. "Clean sniper shot, no collateral damage." "Yeah, those guys are incredible," the other replied. "Takes serious skill to make that kind of shot in an urban environment." Sarah continued cleaning her rifle, saying nothing. Let them think what they wanted to think. Her job wasn't to receive recognition. It was to eliminate threats and protect American and Iraqi lives. The satisfaction came from missions accomplished, not from correcting other people's assumptions. Later that night, she called her aunt in Detroit, one of the few family members who knew even the general outlines of her work. "How are you doing, baby?" her aunt asked, the warmth in her voice carrying clearly across the satellite connection. I'm good, Aunt Marie. Just wanted to hear a friendly voice. You sound tired. Are they taking good care of you over there? Sarah smiled. I'm taking good care of myself, and I'm doing what I trained to do. Your grandmother would be so proud of you. She always said you were going to do something special with your life. After the call ended, Sarah lay on her cot thinking about her grandmother's words about proving herself twice as hard. Tomorrow would bring another mission, another opportunity to demonstrate that excellence had nothing to do with what people expected based on appearance, and everything to do with skill, dedication, and the willingness to serve something larger than herself. 3 weeks after the Hassan elimination, Sarah found herself facing the most challenging operation of her career. Intelligence had identified a network of insurgent leaders planning a coordinated attack against multiple coalition targets across Baghdad. The operation, codenamed Harvest Moon, required simultaneous actions against 4 different locations, demanding unprecedented coordination and precision. The morning briefing included representatives from higher command, including General Patricia Morrison, one of the few female generals in the theater of operations. Morrison's presence indicated the strategic importance of the mission and the high level of attention it was receiving from Pentagon leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Morrison began, studying the assembled special operations personnel. We have intelligence indicating that tomorrow night, insurgent forces plan to execute coordinated attacks against the international zone, Camp Victory, Baghdad International Airport, and the Iraqi Parliament building. The scale and sophistication of this planned operation represent a significant escalation in insurgent capabilities.
Sarah studied the intelligence brief spread across the table.
The 4 target locations were geographically dispersed across Baghdad, requiring separate teams with precise timing to prevent the insurgents from adapting their plan once the first target was eliminated. The key to disrupting this operation, Morrison continued, is eliminating the leadership structure before they can execute their plan. We have identified 4 high-value targets who are coordinating different aspects of the attack. These targets must be eliminated simultaneously to prevent the surviving leaders from modifying the operation. The complexity was unprecedented. Sarah's team would be responsible for coordinating all 4 operations while personally executing the elimination of the primary target, Omar al-Rashid, the former Iraqi intelligence officer who had organized the entire network. After the briefing, Morrison approached Sarah privately. Commander Mitchell, I've been following your work here. Your success rate is exceptional, and your ability to operate in urban environments without civilian casualties is exactly what this mission requires. Thank you, General. My team is ready for whatever you need. Morrison nodded, but her expression remained serious. I want you to understand something, Commander. This operation will receive significant attention from Washington. Success will demonstrate the effectiveness of our counterinsurgency strategy. Failure could undermine support for continued operations in Iraq. The weight of responsibility was clear. This wasn't just another tactical mission. It was a strategic operation with implications far beyond the immediate military objectives. That afternoon, Sarah met with the 3 other team leaders who would be executing the simultaneous operations. Master Chief Petty Officer Robert Jackson would lead the team targeting the Camp Victory cell. Lieutenant Commander David Walsh would handle the airport threat. Captain Maria Santos would eliminate the international zone target. All 3 were experienced special operations personnel, but none had worked with Sarah before. She could sense their initial uncertainty about taking orders from someone they didn't know, particularly a woman in a leadership role that challenged their preconceptions about combat command. Let's review the synchronization requirements, Sarah began, spreading a detailed timeline across the conference table. All 4 targets must be eliminated within a 30-minute window to prevent tactical adaptation by surviving cell members. That's a tight window, especially considering the geographic separation. Communications delays alone could throw off the timing. Which is why we're using a centralized command structure, Sarah replied. I'll be coordinating all 4 operations from Overwatch Station Alpha, with direct communication links to each team. No one moves until I give the execute order. Walsh looks skeptical. Commander, with respect, battlefield conditions can change rapidly. Team leaders need the flexibility to adapt to developing situations. Sarah understood the concern. Special operations culture emphasized decentralized leadership and individual initiative. Her approach represented a more centralized command structure that some operators found restrictive. Captain Walsh, I understand your concern. But this operation requires precise synchronization that can only be achieved through centralized control. Each team will have tactical flexibility within their assigned mission parameters, but the overall timing must be coordinated. Over the next several hours, The 4 teams rehearsed the operation using detailed scale models of their target areas. Every aspect was practiced repeatedly. Approach routes, target identification, engagement procedures, extraction plans, and contingency responses. Sarah's target, al-Rashid, was the most challenging. He had been a colonel in Saddam Hussein's intelligence service and understood security procedures better than the other targets. He moved frequently, used multiple safe houses, and maintained sophisticated counter-surveillance measures. Intelligence indicates al-Rashid will be at this location tomorrow night, Chen reported, pointing to a building in eastern Baghdad. But he has 3 backup locations within a 5-kilometer radius. If he suspects surveillance, he can disappear into the city's underground networks. Sarah studied the target area through satellite imagery and drone footage. The primary safe house was a 2-story building in a residential neighborhood, similar to dozens of others in the area. Al-Rashid's choice of location was tactically sound. The building provided multiple escape routes while blending into the surrounding urban environment. "What's our intelligence confidence level?" she asked. 70% for the primary location, based on communications intercepts and human intelligence. The source has been reliable in the past, but al-Rashid has been implementing operational security measures that make tracking more difficult. That evening, Sarah conducted her final equipment inspection. Her rifle had been re-zeroed that afternoon, and she had test-fired 20 rounds to confirm its accuracy. The weapon was performing flawlessly, grouping shots within 1 inch at 100 meters. But this mission would require more than marksmanship. As the overall mission commander, Sarah would need to make real-time decisions affecting 4 different teams operating across Baghdad. She would be coordinating the most complex special operations mission of the Iraq campaign while simultaneously executing her own portion of the plan. At 2200 hours, all 4 teams departed their forward operating bases and moved to their assigned positions. Sarah's team established overwatch at a building 800 meters from al-Rashid's suspected location, while the other 3 teams moved to positions around their respective targets. The command post Sarah had established on the roof of their overwatch building resembled a miniature tactical operations center. Multiple radio systems provided communications with all 4 teams, while computer displays showed real-time intelligence updates and drone footage of all target areas. "Station Alpha, this is Team 2. Jackson's voice crackled through the radio. "In position at Camp Victory target area. No movement observed." "Station Alpha, Team 3 in position," Walsh reported from the airport area. "Surveillance indicates target is present at primary location." "Station Alpha, Team 4 ready," Santos confirmed from the international zone. "Target identified and tracked." Sarah checked her watch. 23:47 hours. The operation was scheduled to commence at 0030, giving all teams time to establish final positions and confirm target locations. Through her rifle scope, Sarah could see al-Rashid's safe house. Lights were visible in 2 second-floor windows, and thermal imaging indicated the presence of multiple individuals inside the building. But she needed positive visual confirmation of al-Rashid himself before authorizing the other teams to proceed. At 0015, her patience was rewarded. Al-Rashid appeared at one of the illuminated windows, speaking on a cellular phone. Even at 800 meters, Sarah could identify him through her scope, tall, bearded, with the distinctive limp he had acquired during the Iran-Iraq War. "All teams, Station Alpha," she transmitted. "Primary target confirmed at location. Prepare for execute order." The next 10 minutes passed slowly as each team confirmed their readiness. Sarah felt the familiar calm that preceded complex operations. Her mind focused on the tactical coordination required to ensure success. At 0029, she began the final countdown. "All teams, execute in 60 seconds. Mark your time now." Sarah settled behind her rifle, her crosshairs centered on the window where al-Rashid continued his phone conversation. Around Baghdad, 3 other teams were preparing to eliminate their targets in precise synchronization. "Execute, execute, execute." Sarah transmitted at exactly 0030 hours. Her rifle fired a split second later, the bullet traveling 800 meters in just over 1 second to strike al-Rashid's center mass. Through her scope, she saw him collapse immediately, the phone falling from his hand as he dropped below the window frame. "Station Alpha, Team 2. Target eliminated," Jackson reported within seconds. "Team 3, target down," Walsh confirmed. "Team 4, mission complete," Santos added. In less than 30 seconds, all 4 insurgent leaders had been eliminated simultaneously across Baghdad. The coordinated attack they had planned would never occur, and their network of cells would be leaderless and confused. "All teams, this is Station Alpha. Mission complete. Execute extraction procedures," Sarah transmitted, already beginning to pack her equipment. The extraction went smoothly, with all teams reaching their pickup points without incident. By 0200 hours, Sarah was back at the forward operating base conducting the initial debrief with her team leaders. "Outstanding coordination, Commander," Jackson said during the debrief. "I've never seen 4 separate operations synchronized that precisely." Walsh nodded in agreement. The centralized command structure worked perfectly. Having single-point coordination eliminated the communication delays that usually complicate multi-team operations. Santos smiled. "I have to admit I was skeptical about the command structure initially, but your coordination made this operation possible. I don't think we could have achieved this level of synchronization any other way." The compliments were genuine, and Sarah appreciated them. But she also noticed something else. These experienced operators, all of whom had initially questioned her leadership, were now looking at her with a different kind of respect. She had proven herself in the crucible of complex combat operations, and they recognized her competence regardless of their initial assumptions. General Morrison arrived at the base the following morning for a comprehensive debrief. The successful operation had indeed received attention in Washington, and preliminary intelligence indicated that insurgent operations in Baghdad had been significantly disrupted. "Commander Mitchell," Morrison said after reviewing the mission reports, "this operation represents the kind of precision counterinsurgency work that will define success in Iraq. Your leadership and coordination were exemplary." But Morrison's next words surprised Sarah. "I'm recommending you for the Silver Star, and I'm also recommending you for promotion to Commander. Your work here deserves recognition at the highest levels." Sarah felt a moment of uncertainty. Recognition was gratifying, but it also meant visibility that could complicate her future special operations work. The effectiveness of her current role depended partly on her ability to operate without attracting attention from media or political scrutiny. "General, I appreciate the recognition, but I'm concerned about maintaining operational effectiveness. My work here requires a certain level of anonymity." Morrison understood immediately. "I've considered that, Commander. The recognition will be processed through classified channels. Your operational security will be maintained." Over the following weeks, Sarah continued her operations in Baghdad, but she became aware of a subtle change in how she was perceived by other military personnel. Word of her leadership role had spread through informal networks, and she noticed fewer assumptions about her capabilities based on her appearance. The contractors who had dismissed her as support personnel now nodded respectfully when she passed. Junior officers sought her advice on urban operations tactics. Even senior commanders began requesting her input on strategic planning. But the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. A week after the Harvest Moon operation, Sarah received a letter from the family of a Marine who had been killed in Iraq 6 months earlier. The family had learned through unofficial channels that Sarah's operations had eliminated the insurgent cell responsible for their son's death. "We wanted you to know," the letter read, "that our son's sacrifice wasn't in vain, and that people like you are ensuring that other families won't suffer the loss we've experienced. Thank you for your service and your courage." Sarah read the letter several times, thinking about the complex chain of events that had led from her grandmother's sewing room in Detroit to a rooftop in Baghdad, where she commanded special operations forces in combat. The path hadn't been easy, and she had faced obstacles that others never encountered. But she had also discovered capabilities within herself that might never have been developed under different circumstances. A month later, Sarah received orders transferring her to a new assignment at the Special Operations Command headquarters in Tampa, Florida. Her time leading combat operations in Iraq was ending, but her career in special operations was evolving towards strategic planning and training roles. On her final day in Baghdad, she stood on the roof of the forward operating base, looking out over the city where she had proven herself in the most demanding circumstances imaginable. Tomorrow, she would return to the United States, where she would face different challenges and different assumptions about what she could accomplish. But she would return with something invaluable: the absolute certainty that excellence was measured by results, not by the expectations others held based on appearance. She had led America's most elite warriors in combat, had made life-and-death decisions that affected the strategic outcome of military operations, and had done it all while maintaining the highest standards of professional competence. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind one final time. "Your hands can do anything anybody else's hands can do, and your mind can think anything anybody else's mind can think." Sarah Mitchell had proven those words true in the crucible of combat, and she would carry that proof with her wherever her career led next. As she prepared to leave Iraq, Sarah reflected on what her experience meant for other women and minorities who would follow similar paths in the military. Her success hadn't been achieved by lowering standards or asking for special consideration. Instead, it had come from meeting the same rigorous requirements expected of all special operations personnel, while overcoming additional obstacles that others never faced. The military was changing, slowly but inevitably. The integration of women into combat roles would continue, and future generations would benefit from the precedents being established by pioneers like Sarah. But change would only succeed if it was based on merit and capability, rather than politics or social pressure. Her final report to General Morrison emphasized this point. The success of integration depends on maintaining the highest standards while ensuring equal opportunity to meet those standards. Excellence in special operations is colorblind and genderblind. It recognizes only competence, courage, and commitment to mission success. As Sarah boarded the transport aircraft that would take her back to the United States, she carried with her the satisfaction of missions accomplished and standards upheld. She had proven that leadership in combat was about skill, judgment, and the ability to make difficult decisions under extreme pressure. Her success had opened doors for others while demonstrating that excellence truly was measured by results, not by the assumptions people made based on appearance. The young woman who had been dismissed by contractors as just another support person had proven herself to be one of the most effective special operations leaders of her generation. And in proving herself, she had helped prove something larger about the potential that exists when opportunity meets preparation, regardless of the color of skin or gender of the person seizing that opportunity. Judged by color, little did they know the female sniper was leading SEAL operations.